So, Baghdadi is dead and with him the Caliphate, the Islamic State. Right? No. ISIS was only partially a physical state. It is primarily a virtual caliphate. It is a virtual Islamic state that exists in a shared virtual reality, and that in turn exists in a network of whatever communication tools its participants still believe are secure. But that virtual caliphate, that virtual Islamic state, has a much more subtle basis. And that basis is far harder to either penetrate or destroy than any communications network. The basis of the virtual caliphate is the shared value that many Muslims place in the concept of the caliphate and of an Islamic state. These exist in what might best be called the shared consciousness that is the basis of Islamic culture. That shared consciousness can change, and it has changed over time. But change cannot happen through intelligence gathering or military operations or propaganda campaigns. Like the different kinds of shared consciousnesses that form the basis of every culture, the shared consciousness of Muslims changes slowly, and it only changes through an organic process of evolution. It only changes as Muslims interact with one another and respond to the broader social and natural environment of which they are a part. For most of Muslim history, particularly in the majority Sunni tradition, the presence of a caliphate was an essential part of Islamic life. It was the political manifestation of the reality of God's ultimate sovereignty, so you can imagine its importance. It was what guaranteed that humans could live within an order that God had mandated. It was the insurance against that chaos that ensues within societies and between societies that are totally ignorant of God's law. That is the reason that the end of the universally recognized caliphate in 1924 was a crisis for the whole Muslim world. The Caliph at that time ruled only a tiny fraction of Muslims, but he was a symbol of the fulfillment of the Muslim aspiration for God's rule over all of human life without reservation. As long as the concept of a human caliphate remains in the minds of at least some Muslims as a guarantor of their personal religious fulfillment, then there will be those who seek to create an Islamic state, sometimes by violence. There is, in the Islamic tradition of political thought, room for human states that are less than ideal. There is room for states that promise security and rule of law in line with what real governments can actually deliver. And there is within the Islamic tradition the idea that Muslims can live a fully Muslim life within such states, even when those states are dominated by non-Muslims. Popular Muslim writers and speakers such as Tariq Ramadan in Europe and Abdurrahman Wahid in Indonesia, Anwar Ibrahim in Malaysia, Zayuddin Sadar from Pakistan, and Rahed Ghannouchi in North Africa, these have all proposed that Muslims do not need an Islamic state. Instead, these scholars and leaders say that what Muslims need is a society built on what might be called an Islamic state of mind, although it could equally be a Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist state of mind. This state of mind, really a modern state of mind, believes that all humans can and must live under a universal moral law that calls for mutual respect, tolerance, and care, and that all religions know that law. Writers like those I've mentioned are helping reform the Muslim theology of the Caliphate to protect not only the lives and decency of their fellow human beings, but to protect the holiness of God. These Muslims, the vast majority of Muslims, are the natural allies of all of us who seek peace. And it is by forging alliances with them that we will ultimately win the war against the terrorists. Again, it is by making allies with those Muslims who agree that we can all share a belief in a common moral law, one that we determine ourselves through our democracies, that is ultimately going to defeat the war on terror. Thanks.